lots to cover today, so hopefully we will keep it within 15 minutes. Start as we always do with the Aspen updates in an instant for 2303, although this has release notes for 230210. So 230210 was kind of a special release that we did for one of our partners. We had a lot of, they had a conference coming up and had a bunch of special needs that needed to get done. So we wanted to make sure that we got those done for them. So lots of cool things in this release that we wanted to make sure that we called out. So first thing we did was add a couple of new facets, and these can be enabled for you in the grouped work facets. But here I just did, and I'm using Swan, one of our partners, to test on. It wasn't specifically done for them, but they've got a good test server with lots of data in it. So here we've got just a search for architecture. And if we go to the people facet, we've got now a person or personal name facet, which on this site we're calling people, as well as a corporate name, which we're calling organizations. So these are from the 600 and the 610 fields within the MARC records. So we can see like, oh, here's all of the titles that talk about Frank Lloyd Wright. So we can get that. So we can find all of the Frank Lloyd Wright titles, or we could find things about different organizations or sites. So we could learn more about like the Talesian Fellowship. The other thing we did for that's cool, and I'm just going to go back to that blank search. Actually, I'm going to remove just the Talesian Fellowship and add. So now we updated the facets. So if we click on this now, where we used to get more, we still get more. So we're going to show about 30 different popular results. But we've had the issue in the past where like, hey, the most popular results don't have what I'm searching for. So if I want to know more about like IMPay, then I can now search and find things related to IMPay. So, and then I can apply both of those, and that will show me everything that has either Frank Lloyd Wright or IMPay, so that I can do that. That will work then for any facet. So any of those are now searchable if you have more than 30 or so results. So we think this is going to be a really cool feature and really useful for patrons for doing research. So we've definitely had lots of cases where we needed to be able to dive into those. So very cool. We're thrilled to have that in there. As part of adding the new people and organizations facet, those kind of duplicate the sub or the topic facet. So we wanted to give a way to pull those out and not include them within the topics facet. So if we go over to this, we can look at our system variables is where this is set now, because it applies to everything. And if we go into system variables, we can see there is include personal and corporate names in the topics facet. So that's part of the indexing section where we're grouping some of those things. So if you use the topics and don't want to include the personal and corporate names, I would suggest leaving this on. If you are going to show the personal and corporate names, then pulling those out might be a good idea, just to be a little more specific. The library that we were working on this for also has lots and lots of cool e-content. So a lot of their 856 URLs are linking to the actual records. So I'm going to do just a search here for annual report. So we've got a couple of annual reports here with 856 content in them. So in this case, we're calling it out as a separate format. So we're going to see our regular book. So in this case, we've got an item that's just a reference item, and then we've got the online content. Clicking on that will bring up in a new window, and we get to the actual content. If you click into this, and this is a lot of the work, so this is work that's in 2303, a bunch of stuff that Cody's done to help break out these formats. So when a particular record actually references more than one format, they get broken out. Let's go look in here though. We'll get back to that in a minute. So here we've got our online content and a reference. We've got the Oh, so here's our 856 link. So there we've got the just click to access the document. And we can see that's our 856 link. So we can easily get to that. The other thing we did here is and then if you have multiple 856 links, it will give you a pop-up where you can choose these. Some of this functionality was available a couple of releases ago. We've released the ability to show 856 links as access online buttons. That option has been removed in favor of a new option that does the actual indexing. So it's just a little more powerful. We can search, we can fasten on it. It shows up in the index a little bit better. So that new one, we're going to show off. So the other thing we did is we added the ability to search this page. So if you're not sure, instead of having to Control F everything, we'll search for indexing and we'll go straight to our indexing profile. And then we can go in. So there's the index 856 link. So this is the new option where you can do that. If you are going to turn that on, just be aware that there are a lot of times when a lot of the MARC records we get do have 856 links that are formatted with its first indicator of 4 and second indicator of either 0 or 1. A lot of times we'll be getting MARC records from vendors that have like table of contents and stuff linked in. So just be aware of that. If you do decide to turn this on, you may have to go through and clean up some of those links that you may not want to show. It is using all the same logic that we were using for the access online buttons, where it would look at the specific fields and subfields to make sure that it was a good one, a good 856 link to show. But the other thing, so there are 780 and 785 fields, again, not frequently used, but those are continues and continues by. So in this case, we have the annual report of 2016. Well, the next one is the annual report of 2017. So that is continued by 2017. We can click to get into that and do the access online, or we can directly do the access online here. I don't have a good demo for it, but there's also parent-child relationships. And we did a lot this release with parent and child relationships. I haven't seen that in public libraries. We haven't seen it at all. If you do though, it's really cool. It'll show you, hey, this is part of this title and all of the records that are part of that. And then parent records as well. So you can easily navigate through those. So just really cool stuff as we start getting more and more complex records that are fun to work with. So this is what I was alluding to earlier that Cody was working on. So with certain ILSs, it happens quite a bit where we'll get two different formats within the same record. So in this case, we have both book and reference. And previously what was happening was you would kind of get that placehold button, or it would show that it was non-holdable based off what there was the most of. We did a lot to actually make sure that, hey, book and reference are separated out as separate formats. You don't get a placehold for the reference, you do for the book, just so that you can easily tell what's what. We have seen some libraries that have like book and large print, or DVD and Blu-ray. Those will be separated out now. However, the thing that to be aware of is when it's placing a hold, it's still using the hold logic. So if you're not, like, it's basically going to try to, by default, place bib level hold. So the patron won't really know if they're getting the book or the large print, and you won't know necessarily on the back end. We've seen that's kind of consistent with what the ILSs themselves do. So our suggestion is always for things like book and large print, make sure to separate them out onto separate bibs because they are distinct things, and somebody doesn't necessarily want the book if they want the large print, and vice versa. And they might, the DVD or the Blu-ray might not play in their DVD player, so make sure to separate those out. But definitely for the non-holdable stuff, this is a really good thing to make sure that we get those. And those are going to show in search results and grouped work display. So yeah, we're really excited to see how those work. So yeah, so there's our hands are not for hitting. So just really cool. So we're excited to do that. We think it's going to solve a lot of issues too. So all right. Moving into 2303. So the 2303 was what has that different display. Then there's just a ton of other updates. So Jordan's going to talk through the LEDA updates here in a minute, and I'm definitely going to go over time. But we've been busy, so there's lots to show. So in account profiles, we've added the ability to set up single sign-on based off that. We've also added a tie between the library and the account profile. So if every library in the same consortium is setting up single sign-on the same way, you no longer have to set it up for each individual library. And at the same time, if each library does have their own, then we can have it separate as well. We split out some of the Aspen LEDA settings. So the basic app settings are now location settings, so you can see those. So there we've got all of our location-based settings, and then there's general settings. I think Jordan's showing this later, but we have a new option in general settings to automatically rotate library card to landscape, and Jordan will talk more about that later. Within the indexing profile, one of the other support organizations helped with some of this. So we've got the ability to hide and show different fields based off what's selected. So if you are an evergreen library, you're going to see different fields down here. So there's some specific evergreen fields that we're going to see if we're set to evergreen versus if we're set to Koha or Triple I, which is Sierra or Millennium, Polaris, that kind of thing. So just things to make it a little easier to update. Let's see, lots of Koha updates this time. So if we go into our preferences, our messaging settings. So we now have the ability to set a preferred language for notices. This is a Koha feature that got added in, I think, 2205, where you can actually change what language you want your notices in. So you can say, yeah, I want all of my notices in English or in Spanish. So new feature there to help out some of our non-native, non-English speaking patrons. And then we're also doing a lot of work on 22.11. I'm not going to go through every single one of those, but things like setting pronouns in Koha, being able to change pickup locations based off new system settings, canceling waiting holds, updates for renewals, that kind of thing. So lots of good stuff going on in there. Also some materials request updates that have been much requested for. So in the library settings now, we have the ability to say in our materials requests, do you want an email sent when material requests are created? So if you don't have a ton of material requests coming in, maybe one a week, every other week, then you can say, hey, every time a new materials request comes in, email it to me. And then also send an email to staff when they're assigned a materials request. So for people that aren't using materials requests or aren't getting a huge volume, a good way to alert staff that they've got something they need to do. So this is a general one for the library for the new ones. And then when they're assigned, that's going to be as part of your, so if you have materials request permissions, you're going to go into your staff settings and you can say there's a reply to emails and an email signature. If that's turned on, then you can also say, hey, I do want to have it, or maybe I'm somebody who checks every day and I don't want to get an email with every single time something is assigned to me, I can turn that off. So just great new ways for libraries to better interact with materials request. And that applies to the built-in materials request system within Aspen. If you're using another materials request system, it won't do those things. Talked about single sign-on. Other things to talk about just to make things easier. Titles you rated is now paginated. We've had a user that had like 1,200 ratings and it was too much and it overloaded the system. So we paginated that now to make it a little easier to work with. And also separated out the not interested titles. So things you're not interested in can be separate as well and is also paginated. So we're excited to have that. There is more that I don't have time for, but please check the release notes. Again, that's beta.aspendiscovery.org, admin release notes. And I will turn it over to Jordan to talk about the LIDA things.
Hello, everyone. Let me get my simulator shared, and I'll talk about a few of the things that we did as well, because we also focused on, just like we said, a lot of partner priorities, fixed a good number of bugs, and we also have a few new things. So one of the bugs that we fixed that I'll just describe is when you were selecting a library at login on some phones, you actually kind of had to tap twice. You'd like search for the library and then tap it to select it and then tap it to apply it. Just one tap too many. We fixed that. You only have to tap once now. Another is with dark mode. Those users that had dark mode, LIDA will now retain dark mode. So if you completely close out the app and then you come back and sign back in, it will remember that you were wanting to use it in dark mode and you don't have to set that setting again. Another thing that we did was we increased the touch area on some of the buttons was just a little bit small, especially with those facets. So they're just a little bit easier to select for those of us with the fatter fingers. A couple of other things with geolocation too. We noticed that there was a bug where sometimes on iOS, it was locating you in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and it wasn't consistent, but we were able to figure it out and fix that. We know there's still the geolocation issue for Android. This was a component that we use in LIDA. It's not something we can fix directly, where we had to turn off the geolocation so that it can find the user's nearest library, and for Android users have to search. That component though does now have a fix. We just learned about that. And so that'll be getting a fix next month. So I know that can be annoying for our Android users, and I just wanted to let you know. Another thing that we fixed is to make the searching, and I will demo this one, to make the searching and application of facets within LIDA consistent with what happens in Discovery as well as what happens across the web. So I'll just show this by, if you conduct a search, so I searched for cakes, then I'm going to apply a facet, nonfiction, and update, and it's going to give me all the nonfiction books on cakes like I would expect. Now, before it was retaining those facets sometimes if I did a new search, and we don't want it to do that. We don't want users to have to manually remove the facets. That's just not how searching normally works on the web. If they conduct a new search, so this time I'll search for cookies. We want those facets to automatically clear with a new search. So you can see that fiction, nonfiction is no longer selected for nonfiction. Another one that we found that I want to bring up just because I want maybe some of you to do a little bit more testing on it is with that sorting titles on hold. Now, we shared that this was a new feature last month, but we discovered that depending on the ILS, there were maybe some bugs with the sorting. So we think we got it fixed. We think we have everything sorted now. So we can sort by title, we can sort by author, and that should all work now. But I would go ahead and test it and let us know if it's not working for you. Another one that we did, just little things just to make it perfectly consistent with Discovery. I'm going to search for Harry Potter.